Welcome to our webinar series for professionals.
Welcome everyone, and thank you to all of those who joined in Copenhagen over the weekend, where we were 150 people meeting in person. That was really nice for 3 days with learning on turbo level, but also connecting. And I think also some of these webinars sometimes is part of this connection, that we kind of know each other, and then when we meet, we're even more happy to meet, etc. Anyway, today we are here with Dr. Cowden, and I'm actually quite honored to be able to share this hour with Dr. Cowden. Dr. Cowden has been working as a cardiologist and internist, and he is a licensed homeopathy medical doctor and has many, many years of experience. And I met Dr. Cowden in Austria, in Klagenfurt. We think it was around 2011 and 12, at it was like an infectious conference we were going to, and Dr. Cowden were educating the day before in the Cowden protocol, which is a protocol for infection like Lyme's disease and co-infections. And that was when I tried out herbal treatments for my Lyme's disease back then, and it helped me get off antibiotics. So I'm eternally grateful to Dr. Cowden and his research and his experience and sharing his knowledge to practitioners. And I felt how his knowledge actually really helped me. So thank you, Dr. Cowden, for that. And at the same time, we were actually also meeting up with His Holiness Dalai Lama. So I actually managed to shake his hand in Klagenfurt as well. So this is a special unity here, I believe. And then today we are not going to talk so much about infections, but we are going to talk about the product Glucomedics that has been developed from NutraMedics in regards to cholesterol and blood sugar and high blood pressure. So I will pass on the stage for Dr. Cowden so he can do his presentation. And remember, if you want to, then put questions in the chat. And if there's something that I think should be pulled up, I'll pull that up for Q&A at the end of Dr. Cowden's presentation. So Dr. Cowden, would you like to share your slides?
Yeah, excellent.
Take over the stage. I'll mute myself.
There we go. You should be able to see that now.
Yes, we can see it.
Good, good. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm very happy to be able to present to you today about the Glucomedics. The Glucomedics is only one of about 50 different products that the NutraMedics company makes, but they are mostly herbal extracts that have been quantum physically imprinted. And so they act like an herbal, but they also act like a homeopathic. And this Glucomedics is an all-natural therapy for the prevention and treatment of the multiple comorbidities of metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is epidemic in the United States and in many other countries of the world. In the United States, it's estimated that about 60% of the population have some form of metabolic syndrome. A little bit about my background. I went to medical school in Houston, Texas, and did internship residency and 2 fellowships in St. Louis University Hospital Group in St. Louis, and I became board certified in cardiology, internal medicine, and licensed in homeopathy, and practiced until 2019. So I practiced for 34 years before I retired to do teaching and research. My primary focus on research now is reversing amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And I chose that because that's the most challenging condition that I ever treated when I was in practice. Please note the two websites at the bottom in red. My personal website, drleecowden.com, is everything on there is free. So feel free to look at the articles and utilize the information there. The other website, acimconnect.com, I co-founded in 2008, and there's about 2,000 hours worth of educational information on integrative medicine on that website. Most of it you have to pay something for, but there's a few free things on there. Okay, so metabolic syndrome is a major health hazard of the modern world. In my opinion, it's probably caused by excessive exposure to phthalates, which are the chemicals that are used to soften plastics, and from high fructose corn syrup, which is epidemic use of high fructose corn syrup in the United States. It's found in hamburger buns, and it's found in all kinds of other processed foods. And they add it to foods in order to make those foods more addictive, so people buy more of those foods. And that's why we have such a high incidence of obesity and overweight people in the United States. And then also chromium deficiency probably contributes to the metabolic syndrome as well. And there's some references at the bottom that you can look up later. So what is metabolic syndrome? It's where you have a high blood sugar and also a high insulin level. So there's insulin resistance. The cells don't respond to the insulin, so the pancreas pumps out more insulin to try to get the cells to respond. And there's usually high body fat, especially around the waist, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, and usually a low HDL cholesterol. One quick, simple marker for the metabolic syndrome is when the triglyceride to HDL cholesterol ratio is greater than 1.5. So the ratio between triglyceride and cholesterol should be 1.5 or less. So if you see a high ratio of triglyceride cholesterol, you should consider measuring the fasting insulin level at the same time that you measure the fasting glucose. If the insulin is higher than you would expect it to be for the amount of glucose that's in the blood at that moment, then that's pretty clear evidence that you have metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome increases various diseases, increased risk of myocardial infarctions or heart attacks, increased risk of strokes and transient ischemic attacks, and type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. So one thing that's common to all of these is an increased inflammation in the tissues, and that presumably is caused by the combination of high insulin levels and high glucose levels. Now, according to pooled data from 8 studies across Europe, 35% of the men and 29 or almost 30% of the women over the age of 40 suffered from metabolic syndrome. I'm pretty sure it's higher than that in the United States. I think it may be as high as 50 or 60% in the United States because there's a large percentage of the population with hypertension and diabetes. And as I said, 60% of the population is overweight here in the United States. But metabolic syndrome is increasing rapidly in children and teenagers. And that's of grave concern because of the comorbidities of the metabolic syndrome. I saw a 14-year-old boy with a heart attack, with a myocardial infarction. And he had high insulin levels and high blood pressure, and was a little overweight. So what is the solution for this metabolic syndrome? From the research that we've now done, it appears that glucometics is a very good solution for that, because it's made from herbal remedies. It does not seem to have significant amount of toxicity, which I'll show you the animal research in a little bit about low toxicity from this product. So it appears to be an effective prevention and treatment for the various comorbidities of metabolic syndrome. Now, the glucometics is not very complicated. It's only 2 different herbs and the quantum physical imprints that have been added. Now, Samento is a very special type of Uncaria tomentosa, or cat's claw, that was harvested in the Peruvian jungle on 2 different years. And that particular one, as we'll see in a minute, did not have a significant amount of tetracyclic oxidol alkaloids. Big word, which we'll just abbreviate TOAs. But the Samento is the only cat's claw product on the U.S. market that has essentially 0 TOAs, and you'll see the benefit of that in a moment. The stevia is sometimes called sweet leaf. Is found in a tree in South America also. Stevia rebaudiana is the botanical name. And and stevia is a very amazing product also. If you want to try to reduce your sugar intake, you can use the nutrimitic stevia extract as a sweetener for your beverages and your recipes that you make. And it's very sweet. For most people that don't eat a lot of sugar, 5 drops of the nutrimitic stevia is equivalent to 1 teaspoon of sugar. So very, very sweet. Now, if you put too much stevia, you'll start detecting a bit of a bitter taste. So you want to just use the amount that is just enough to give the sweetness that you like, but not on over into the bitter. If a person eats a lot of sugar, it may take 15 or even 20 drops of stevia for them to perceive a sweet taste, because their taste buds have been desensitized by eating all that sugar. Okay, Samento is a unique pentacyclic chemotype of the cat's claw with essentially no tetracyclic oxidol alkaloids, no TOAs. And we've been down to Peru many seasons looking for the POA type of chemotype of cat's claw, but only 2 seasons were we able to find it and harvest it. So it's apparently the cat's claw vine that grows about 30 to 40 meters up into the canopy of the trees of the forest doesn't have the same phenotypic manifestation every year. It has a phenotypic manifestation without the TOAs on certain years where there's the right amount of rainfall, the right amount of sunlight, the correct other circumstances in the environment. Now, the 2 groups of alkaloids that are found in the cat's claw, as I said, are the tetracyclic oxidol alkaloids, and those 3 that are listed there are all hard to pronounce, but rhinocophyllin, isorhinocophilin are the two that are found in some of the cat's claw that are on the market, but not in the nutramatic Samento. And then the species at the bottom, the alkaloids at the bottom, are found in the species of cat's claw that Nutramatics harvests. And there's the chemical analysis there on the right, showing that the other forms are essentially no tetracyclic oxygenol alkaloids. This is the PhD in at the university in Peru who did the analysis, and he said this is the first time that analyzed the laboratory samples of cat's claw have been completely TOA free in this lab. And so they do a lot of analysis of the cat's claw for other companies, but they had never seen, no TOAs previously until we brought them the sample of the Samento. Okay, so to distinguish between the TOAs and the POAs, the TOAs, when present, only act to stimulate the immune system, but when they are absent, the pentacyclic oxygenol alkaloids, the POAs, are free to act as immune modulators and to raise or lower the immunity. That means they're acting as an immune system adaptogen, not just raising the immune system, but if a person has autoimmunity, it tones the immunity down. If they have underactive immunity, that raises immunity up as needed. So it can decrease the inflammation, and as I said earlier, the inflammation is a primary factor in the metabolic syndrome. So, you get the effect that the body needs basically from the Samento, as opposed to the other cat's claw products that are on the market where you get only immune stimulation. Okay, on average, cat's claw products contain as much as 80% TOAs, and yet as little as 1% can cause a 30% reduction in the immune system function and the anti-inflammatory effect of the cat's claw. But Samento has much less than 1% TOAs to oppose the POAs, and so you get the adaptogenic effect on the immune system and reduce the inflammation and reduce the metabolic syndrome. So it reduces the blood pressure and cholesterol and the blood sugar and the triglycerides, and lowers the risk of stroke and heart attack. Now, this article shows that the tetracyclic oxygenol alkaloids are dose dependently reduce the activity of the pentacyclic oxygenol alkaloids. This particular product that they used was a one where they did a chemical separation of the POAs and TOAs. But as I said, the Nutramatics Samento is harvested in nature without the TOAs. Yeah, and this is also one where they did the extraction process, but the tetracyclic oxygenol alkaloids act as a central nervous system, act on the central nervous system, whereas the POAs act on the cellular immune system. And this is another research article showing the prophylaxis and treatment of inflammation of the tetracyclic oxygenol alkaloids from the Samento, the Nutramatics brand of cat's claw. And this was published in 2023. You'll see more about that research here in a moment. Samento, as I said, though, is anti-inflammatory because of its fairly high concentration of POAs and essentially zero concentration of TOAs. So it was evaluated in animals and found to be 94% as effective as naproxen, pharmaceutical medication for treatment of inflammation, and 76% as effective as naproxen for the prevention of inflammation. So the highest dose of the pentacyclic chemotype of the Uncaria tomatosa, the Samento, approached the anti-inflammatory activities of the established benchmark pharmaceutical positive controls. So that's nice to know that you can take a natural product like Samento for arthritis, myositis, inflammation in your blood vessels, which is what causes a lot of the atherosclerotic disease, the strokes and the heart attacks. So Samento is reducing the inflammation in all those conditions, comparable to the effect that you would get from a pharmaceutical. So some of the other actions of the Samento in the body. There's research there on ResearchGate showing that the Uncaria tomatosa cat's claw reduces the blood glucose in rats, and also improves the insulin sensitivity and improves the inflammation and experimental non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is rampant in the United States. It's probably 30% of the population have some degree of fatty liver disease here in this country. If insulin resistance is improved, the glucose will be reduced and inflammation will be reduced. And so that's because the high glucose and the high insulin is a cause for the inflammation in the body. And then both of these herbal constituents of the Samento have powerful antimicrobial properties, which I'll discuss in subsequent slides. Okay, a little bit about stevia. As I said, it's called sweet leaf in South America, and it has very strong antimicrobial properties. It has both antibacterial and antiviral properties, and some antifungal properties, in my observation. And it works primarily on the persistent strains in the stationary phase of growth. If there's some microbiologists in the group, they'll understand that. If you're not a microbiologist, don't worry about that. Okay, this is from the European Journal of Microbiology and Immunology. The effectiveness of Stevia rebaudiana, which is in the Samento, or which is in the glucometics, along with the Samento, is a whole leaf extract, and it's effective against various forms of the Borrelia burgdorferi. Dr. Eva Sappi at the University of New Haven, Connecticut, did that research with her group, and they found that the nutriometic stevia, I think I have that on a subsequent slide here. Yeah, there it is. They found that the nutriometic stevia was the most effective antimicrobial of the 3 different types of stevia products on the market that they evaluated in that in vitro study. And you can see there on the graph on the right that that it had almost no no growth of the microbes in the stevia A, which is the one that's found in glucometics, and so some of the other products like the stevia D had really no difference between that and the control, so it wasn't working very well as an antimicrobial at all. And the stevicide, which is thought to be one of the most important constituents of the stevia, had very little effect either. So probably the antimicrobial effect from Nutrimatics stevia is not from the stevoside, which is the one that has the sweetening effect, but from one of the other herbal constituents. But anyway, the stevia A from Nutrimatics was effective in eliminating the Borrelia persisters, and the others much less effective. Now, this shows that it's effective not only against Borrelia, but against a variety of other microbes, Escherichia coli, Pseudomonas, Staphylococcus, Klebsiella, Candida albicans, Aspergillus. So, and down at the bottom, you see about how long it took the stevia to eliminate those different microbes in culture. So it's not working extremely fast, but it's working extremely effectively. One of the things that I've observed is that when you use a pharmaceutical medication, it has one mechanism of action, usually only one mechanism of action, and the bugs, the microbes, the bacteria, funguses, etc., quickly develop biochemical mechanisms to resist the effectiveness of those pharmaceutical drugs. But the herbs, on the other hand, have each herb has several different antimicrobial agents in it, and it's much more difficult for the microbes to develop resistance to it. And so that's why the glucomatics is actually a fairly effective remedy for Lyme disease. Okay, the in vitro studies, found to have anti-hypertensive, anti-lipidemic, anti-hyperglycemic, and effects, and very low in toxicity. Essentially, no significant toxicity. The toxicity is no greater than water. So this was a research article published in 2022, and in this, the glucomatics, which had the extract of the stevia and the Nutrimatics cat's claw or Samento, reduced hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia, hypertension in the rats without toxicity. So they judged this to be an effective treatment for the metabolic syndrome. Dr. Thomas Dooley was one of the doctors that conceptualized the research and helped to carry it out, along with some of the doctors there at the university in Peru. So as far as the antihypertensive effects of the glucomatics, in a 28-day study, they induced hypertension with L-NAMI. That was a non-selective nitric oxide synthase inhibitor. And then their positive control was enalapril, to see how much they could reduce the blood pressure in the rats with the enalapril after they were induced to have high blood pressure by the L-NAMI. And there was 6 groups of rats, 42 rats altogether. And here's the results of the blood pressure study in rats. 94% as effective in reducing diastolic blood pressure as enalapril, and 89% as effective as enalapril in reducing systolic blood pressure. And so you see the graphs there on the right. The top line is the rats that received L-NAMI but no other treatment. So their blood pressure was quite high for a rat. So the next study they did in this rat research in Peru was the induction of hyperlipidemia by giving the rats large amounts of cholesterol. And the positive control that they used was atorvastatin, which is called Lipitor in the United States. I'm not sure what name it has in your country. But 30 rats were randomized to 6 groups in this study, and they found that the glucometics was 95% as effective as Lipitor in reducing the cholesterol levels. And also 98% as effective as Lipitor in reducing the triglyceride levels. Now, the anti-hyperglycemic effects in rats, they used aloxan to cause diabetes in the rats, and then they used Glibenclamide as a positive control. I don't know what the name of the product is in your country, but that's a very common oral hypoglycemic agent used in the United States for treatment of type 2 diabetes. Okay, 30 rats randomized to 6 groups, and they found that the glucometics was 98% as effective as the glibenclamide in reducing the blood sugar. And you see the graphics there on the right. It didn't work quite as fast as glibenclamide, but almost as fast. You know, the light blue line is the pharmaceutical, but the dark green line is the glucometics. So it did finally bring the blood sugar down to the same level as the pharmaceutical. It just took a little bit longer. Now the toxicity studies, there was an acute toxicity study with 5,000 milligrams per kilogram. That's a massive dose, and then observed for 14 days and saw no toxicity in any of the rats from that. And also they did a subchronic toxicity with doses of 250, 1,000, and 2,000 milligrams per kilogram observed for 28 days, and still no evidence of toxicity. And they were looking at the rats, not just for the pathology slides, but also for their behavior, the respirations, their digestive processes, cardiovascular function, urogenital function, skin, musculoskeletal, and any other systemic compromise. So they could not find any observable toxic or adverse effects. So the conclusion from that study was that the glucometics is a safe and effective treatment for hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia, and hypertension. And this extract is expected to affect multiple comorbidities of of metabolic syndrome without any acute or subacute oral toxicity. So if you're using the massive doses that they did in rats and saw no toxicity, they would not expect any toxicity in humans either. Now, even though there's individual pharmaceutical drugs that will address each of these problems, as we saw in the positive controls, none of those will address all 3 conditions: the hyperglycemia, the hyperlipidemia, and the hypertension, like the glucometics will. So with one herbal product, you're addressing all 3 different comorbidities of metabolic syndrome. And the next research was a human research on type 2 diabetes patients in the University of Curacao off the coast of Venezuela, an island there in the ocean. And they were looking at type 2 diabetes there. And then, sorry, that was at the clinical phytoscience. And then at the University of Curacao, they were looking at hypertension, and also at the TerraForce, which is also in Curacao. They were looking at all 3: the hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia and hypertension. So I'll go through each one of those studies here in humans. So this was published in 2022. It was 6 patients with type 2 diabetes that were given the glucomatics, and the results were quite remarkable. They were all Hispanic origin patients with type 2 diabetes. And the dose given was 2 milliliters of glucomatics 2 to 3 times a day, depending on how high the blood sugar was. One of the things that we learned during that study and since then is that if the patient is on a pharmaceutical medication for diabetes, when you start the glucomatics, you better watch the blood sugar very closely, because it can the blood sugar can drop so low that they actually have symptoms of hypoglycemia. So you have to reduce the dosage of the pharmaceutical medications as you start administering the glucomatics. So the patients had their blood glucose measured at baseline, and then after that several times to get the data for the research. So here's a graphic showing the outcome. You see on the far left there that the first patient had a 49% reduction in blood sugar, the next one 25%, 34%, 27%, 37%, 33%, while still on, that last patient was while still on insulin and metformin. But the patient decided to stop the metformin and reduce their insulin dose to half. And even though they did that, the glucomatics still reduced their blood sugar, their baseline blood sugar, by 7%. So that's pretty impressive that that it basically replaced the pharmaceutical medications in 3 of the patients to varying degrees. You see patient number 4 there was on 2 medications, 2 oral medications, and by the end of the study was on none. And the next patient was on 1 oral hypoglycemic agent, and by the end of the study was on none. As I said, the last patient there got off of metformin and reduced the insulin to half. So the insulin treated patients experienced a 50 milligram per deciliter reduction. And that's a pretty substantial reduction. But anyway, the patients were able to, some of the patients were able to get off of their medications completely, and that's impressive. It would be great to do a larger study in humans at some point to see in 100 patients whether that whether half the patients are able to get off their pharmaceutical medications. But even if they couldn't, if they can reduce the pharmaceutical medications, that's a plus because of the expense of the medication and also the side effects of the pharmaceutical medication. So the conclusions from that study: effective treatment for hyperglycemia. The glucomatics is an effective treatment for hyperglycemia in patients with type 2 diabetes, and it can be used beneficially in conjunction with or in place of existing pharmaceutical and other therapies. So it can serve as an alternative to prescription monotherapies or multimodal therapies for the regulation of hyperglycemia. So the next human study that was done was at the University of Curacao, and that was a hypertension study. And so they just randomly chose some patients that had hypertension and got a baseline blood pressure, and then started the glucomatics at 30 drops, which is about a dropper full, just about one milliliter, 3 times a day, and that was diluted in water. A caution: if a patient has hypertension and diabetes, watch their blood sugar closely, because their blood, as I said, their blood sugar can drop as you start the glucomatics dosing. Okay, so they did the evaluations at baseline after 2 weeks and at the end of the research. And the patients were required to measure their blood pressure every day to make sure that their blood pressure was not going up while doing the glucometics. No, there were no dietary requirements during this study. So in this graphic, which shows all the data, I put in the next to the right column the systolic blood pressures in bold, so it'd be easier, and a little bit larger font, so it's easier to read. But you can see that the blood pressure, systolic blood pressure, dropped anywhere from 10 millimeters mercury to as much as 66 millimeters of mercury, but an average drop was about 30 something. And also you see patient number 5 was on pharmaceutical medications at the beginning of the study, but was off pharmaceutical medications by the end of the study, and the same thing for patient number 10. So two patients out of the 11 patients were able to get completely off of their pharmaceutical medications. I believe that one of the researchers said that some of the other patients were able to reduce their dosage of their pharmaceutical medications, but not get completely off. So again, the average systolic blood pressure reduction with the glucometics was 32 millimeters mercury, and the average diastolic reduction was 8 millimeters mercury. And as I said, 2 of the 11 patients stopped their medications altogether, their pharmaceutical medications altogether. And they concluded that glucometics was an effective treatment for hypertension. Now, the last human study was done by the TerraForce company in Curacao, and what they did on this study is just took detailed history, and I'll show you some of those histories here now. This is a 37-year-old male whose blood pressure went from 166 over 104 down to 124 over 78 in 2 weeks' time, and he stopped using conventional pharmaceutical medications, and his blood pressure was still within this beneficial range of 124 over 78. So it looks like the glucometics actually worked better than the pharmaceutical in this patient. Next patient, 62-year-old female, spent 40 years on pharmaceuticals for metabolic syndrome and 37 years on insulin. She started using the glucometics and then stopped 2 of her 3 diabetic drugs and stopped her blood pressure medicine. And at the time of the reporting of the study, was enthusiastic about getting off of her cholesterol medication. I understand that since then she has stopped her cholesterol medication also. So now she's only on 1 pharmaceutical, and she started out on 4 or 5. Next patient, a 60-year-old female with hypertension, diabetes, and refused. She had previously refused taking pharmaceutical medications for her conditions, but she started on the glucometics, and just over a month of treatment, she was dancing with joy because her blood pressure was 114 over 79, and her blood sugar was 98 within the normal range, 98 milligrams per deciliter. Next patient, 73-year-old female who had diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and was taking pharmaceuticals for all 3 conditions. After 3 months on the glucometics, she had stopped her medications for diabetes and hypertension. And after 7 months, she also got off of her medication for high blood cholesterol. So she went from all those medications down to none, and probably could have come off a cholesterol medication by 3 months also, but she was fearful that she would get atherosclerotic disease or heart attack or stroke if she did. So that's why she didn't come off of it immediately. The next patient 70-year-old female with blood pressure 153/76 after a week of taking the glucometics, 30 drops twice a day. She had to stop the glucometics because her blood pressure got too low. Now, probably what I would have done is just reduce the dosage of the glucometics, because 153/76 is not really an ideal blood pressure. It'd be probably better to have a little bit lower than that. I agree that 100/58 is too low, but she may have been able to do half a dropper full, which would be about 1/2 milliliter twice a day, and have good blood pressure control, but no hypotension. Next patient is 53-year-old male with a blood pressure of 160/99, and 2 weeks after taking the glucometics, 30 drops 3 times a day, the blood pressure dropped to 127/76 and remained there. So he was very, very happy that the glucometics was so effective for his blood pressure. The next patient, 49-year-old female with a blood pressure of 202/128. Now that's the type of blood pressure that can cause a stroke, and so the patient was very concerned about the blood pressure being that high. She started on the glucometics, 30 drops 3 times a day, and after 10 days, her blood pressure was 125/85. And she had lost 6 kilograms or 13 pounds of body weight during that same time, because, as I said, the glucometics deals with all the different comorbidities of metabolic syndrome, including obesity. The last patient here, I think this last patient, is a 61-year-old man with a blood pressure of 166/103, also pretty high. Started taking the glucometics, 30 drops or 1 milliliter 3 times a day. After 30 days, his blood pressure was 142/84. So the conclusion from that study was that the glucometics was effective for hyperglycemia, hyperlipidaemia, and hypertension. No single pharmaceutical treats all 3 of those comorbidities of metabolic syndrome, but the glucometics was quite effective in treating all 3. And you can get a beneficial effect from the glucometics in place of the pharmaceutical medications or other therapies that could be used. And because it's 100% natural herbal therapy, it's completely non-toxic with no known side effects, according to the rat studies that were done. So it's time for questions and answers.
It sure is. So I just wrote to Tim that you're so good. I want to invite you back to talk about infections.
Well, we can talk a little bit about infections in the question and answer section.
Yeah, well, let's see, because there were questions to this, so let's maybe focus on that for now. But we've already been through some infections, because you already showed the antimicrobial effect of the products. And of course, our the group here asked because they're very concerned about the microbiome and how a healthy microbiome also impacts health in a good way. So have you done any studies in regards to the microbiome and the good beneficial microbes in regards to treating with Samento and Stevia and the glucometics?
Yeah, I've been using the glucometics herbal tinctures since 22 years, I think now. And when I was in active practice, I was always looking for dysbiosis in the intestine as a result of the patients taking these products, and I never saw it. And so I concluded that because these products are as herbal tinctures, that they're absorbed in the stomach and the very first part of the small intestine, and usually don't make it into the distal small intestine or the large intestine to kill off the microbes there. The tablets pharmaceutical antibiotics that roll down through the intestine, killing microbes as they go until they finally get absorbed in the distal small intestine, are very likely to cause dysbiosis. And so, that's a huge plus when you take an herbal tincture of an antimicrobial, because they get absorbed into the bloodstream and then kill microbes that you want to kill elsewhere in the body, either in the lungs or the urinary tract or wherever else you're treating the infection. And so that's a very good question, though. And I think it's in the United States, we see a lot of people with dysbiosis because they've previously taken a pharmaceutical antibacterial, or they've eaten steak at the regular restaurant where the animal was fed antibiotics before they were slaughtered, and the antibiotics are in the meat, and that gets into the gut, and that antibiotic saturated meat goes down through the gut, pretty far down into the gut, before it finally gets broken down completely and absorbed. So you kill off a lot of the friendly bacteria of the small intestine just from eating antibiotic-laden meats.
Oh. Yeah. I just wanted to, if you could, so because there's a glucometics product that is stevia only, and then there's a glucometics product. And so the stevia only, is that the same composition as the stevia in the glucometics product, or do we have to interpret these two products in different ways?
Well, no, as I said, if you do the glucometics, you need to use a certain amount to get the desired effect on the metabolic syndrome, usually between 1 milliliter and 2 milliliters dosing. And because it's been shown to be non-toxic, even at the massive doses that were given to rats, if you don't get a benefit from 2 milliliters, there's really no reason not to try 3 milliliters dose each time. But the downside of that is, if you do that straight in the mouth, it's probably going to be a bitter taste, because the amount of stevia that's in that. As I said, stevia at the right amount is a sweet taste, but if you go beyond that amount, you get a bitter taste. And so that's why you use the stevia by itself from Nutrimetics for sweetening of drinks and recipes and so on, rather than the glucometics for that purpose. It wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt to use the glucometics, but you probably wouldn't get the the effect on the metabolic syndrome, because as I said, most people only need about 5 drops of the stevia, or about 10 drops of the glucometics, to have a sweetening taste, and that's 1/3 of the dose, the minimum dose that would be effective for hypertension or hypercholesterolemia or diabetes.
So the 1 to 2 milliliters, what is that in drops, please?
Okay, each dropper full is 28 drops, and a dropper full is 1 milliliter, with the type of dropper that the Nutrimetics products have. Yeah, so you can count it out the first time. What you do is you squeeze the bulb of the dropper as hard as you can, stick it down into the liquid, let go of the dropper, and then pull the whole thing out, and it'll have about that much liquid in the dropper. That's called a dropper full. And if you drop those drops back into the bottle, counting them as you go, you'll usually find 28 drops or in the dropper. And so that's 1 milliliter. So 30 drops was basically 1 milliliter.
Okay, so can we put it into like tea, or is it some
Yep. Yep.
super?
You can put it into
I'm gonna imagine this. It doesn't happen in real life at all, but imagine that I have a cup of tea and some chocolate, and then I would put that into my tea. Would the glucometics then counteract or it doesn't, does it work that quickly? Yeah, you can hear I'm hoping.
Well, no. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna give it an analogy. you're wanting to fix a problem, let's say hyperglycemia or diabetes, and in this analogy, you're in a rowboat out in the middle of the ocean, and your rowboat has a hole in the bottom, and there's water coming in the hole in the bottom into your boat, and you have a cup there in your boat, so you start bailing water out of your boat, okay? Uh, and at some point you get tired of bailing, and the water continues to come in the bottom, and your boat sinks to the bottom of the ocean, okay? So the analogy is that the teacup is the glucomatics, but you're continuing to flood the system with sugar. Not a good plan. So what I would advise people to do is get some extra stevia from the nutrimatics in addition to the glucomatics if they have diabetes, and use the stevia to sweeten their drinks and their tea and their recipes and so on, and use the glucomatics in addition to that 2 or 3 times a day to lower their blood sugar. Okay, but you're using the stevia for 2 different purposes there. One is for getting a sweet taste. The other one is to get the blood sugar to go down.
Absolutely. Super. So there was a question just in the beginning before you showed the research, etc. And that was, could there be, because there's some research indicating that there could be an insulin response to sweeteners. And have you measured any insulin response as to, like, you get the stevia, the sweet taste in your mouth, and then the whole nervous system is responding to, now sweet is coming, and is there an insulin increase in that? Had you have any information about that?
I've only done a couple of, when I was in practice, only a couple of tests with measuring the glucose and the insulin simultaneously. And one time we did it after the patient took some of the Nutramax stevia in a drink, and did not see a rise in the insulin levels as a result of that. But that does not make a study. You would want to do a study with at least 6 to 10 patients to see what it was in a group of patients. So, but if you think about it, if the stevia is lowering the blood sugar from high enough levels to require 2 or 3 pharmaceutical medications to control it, down to the point where they have no pharmaceutical medications at all, and their blood sugar's better than it was when they were on 3 pharmaceutical medications, that it's not logical that it's raising their insulin. You know,
Super. So I think we will round up now, but just some of the questions were, where do you get it, etc. But it's in your VMS account. So you just log in as a practitioner to our account, and then it's there. The stevia is there, and the glucometics is there, and there's lots of other nutrametics products that we hopefully soon will educate on as well. There is also my go-to drink is the ginger that we have in Nordic VMS, also available to some areas, but the ginger drink that we often also have at conferences, then I add the glucometics into that. It kind of takes off the sweetness of the glucometics, and then I add all sorts of other stuff into it as well, and I have that as a drink. So, but it's available in VMS, and reach out if you have any questions. The recording will be shared with you, and Dr. Cowden's slides will be shared with you also. And then to you, thank you for a really, really nice and really well-researched presentation on this product. And it's always nice to hear how much experience you have and how it's just, you just feel comfortable listening to your presentations. So thank you very much, Dr. Cowden, and I wish you a lovely day in this new future of America. So see you soon, I hope.
yeah, likewise. Yeah, enjoyed being able to present to your group today. And the Nutramedix products are very unique because as far as I know, there's not any other products on the market that are herbal extracts that are quantum imprinted. And so, again, they work like an herbal and a homeopathic at the same time. All right. Well, till next time.
See you next time. Enjoy Texas.
All right. Thank you.
Bye. And bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
If you do not already have an account with us, please contact our team and we will assist you. If you found this webinar helpful, please like and subscribe to our channel.